Hi YouTube, my name is Aspen. If you don't know me, I'm a top 500 Overwatch support player. I made Juno, and because of that, people frequently ask me for tips when playing her, or even coaching. And I'll be honest, I've never been good at that. But I thought I'd put an effort into making this guide for you guys to hopefully help. Before we even get into it though, I want to say Juno is a very strong support. She's good at damaging, she's good at healing, and she's even played in the Overwatch CS, which is the pro Overwatch scene. That being said, she also has her own carry potential in ranked. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first part of Juno's kit I'll be covering is her primary fire. She shoots 12 bolts and does 90 damage each volley, with the fall being between 25 and 35 meters, where at the furthest she is doing 27 damage. For healing, she does 72 base, with Falf going to 21.6 heals past 35 meters. The immediate focus with her primary fire is going to be healing. However, it is extremely important to do your part in getting out damage on the enemies when no one is in danger, even if they're only taking slivers of damage. The focus must also be on people who are currently fighting versus someone who is low and hiding, and also on your other support because of how vulnerable Juno can be sometimes, so you need your extra support alive. Next, you should not be healing someone who is full HP, because you could be getting value elsewhere and it's a waste of ammo. Speaking of ammo, you shouldn't be spamming reload too much, but you also shouldn't be using the entire clip and forcing reload. The best time to reload is when there's a lack of action or when you're taking a position. Another note is because of her more extreme fall off, you should be walking towards allies or enemies to clear the distance and do more with your gun, granted there is no danger. That being said, aim should be a priority for practice, and since she can do headshots now, it's good to keep that in mind as something to always be working on. Finally, depending on who the second support is, it can determine how much you DPS yourself, which is something I'll cover later on in the video with matchups. But as a general rule of thumb, if you have an Ana, for example, you can do more damage typically versus having Lucio or Zen. Now for my favorite part about Juno, her torpedoes. Torpedoes do 85 heals on hit with 50 over time and 85 damage with an overall range being 40 meters. It's important to note that with this ability, if you lock onto anyone and don't shoot, torpedoes will go on a 10 or 12 second cooldown depending on the mode, versus if you hold them and don't lock, they go on a 2-second cooldown. My playstyle is heavily revolved around this ability, and the thing I check first when getting in a game is what characters I'm playing against. Juno is countered by hit scan, so it's something you need to keep in mind when going for torpedoes in the sky. Against most compositions, however, I will look for off angles, which is basically going on a separate path from my team while still being able to see them. You can also wait until your team is walking up to use torpedoes, but I like to create a space myself and get a bit greedy, as long as I'm not going into an angle that's directly pushing an enemy, but rather clear. Another thing you must keep in mind is always having somewhere to fall back to if you're peeking with DPS torpedoes, because you will be vulnerable in the sky. Also, healing torpedoes will go through walls as long as they're locked on, and damaged ones do not. However, they will curve if an enemy is running away, but sometimes will just hit the wall. Other things to note with the ability is that if someone is running away, it's usually not worth to use it unless you're close enough to where the torpedo would hit, because if it locks on and it doesn't hit them, your torpedo is just on a long CD again. Since I have an aggressive playstyle, I'm able to farm her ult quite fast because I go for damage and healing torpedoes at the same time. That being said, it's very smart to save torpedoes after using her ult, which I'll go over more later. In terms of timing, I like to use torpedoes when tanks are using cooldowns that are protecting them, such as shields, bubbles, because it lets me be a little bit more greedy for damage. Relating to that, if enemies have shield tanks, it is sometimes worth it to fire torpedoes on people standing behind them because it's helpful to break in the shield quicker. I also find it easier to shoot people when I'm flying above said shield, so that's an option as well. All of this information is a lot to take in, but the main reason I stress going for DPS torpedoes is because it's a way of putting pressure on the enemy team yourself and forcing their resources, which will then help your tank and DPS. And of course, what I mentioned earlier, it does help you get your ult faster as well. Next, we will go over Hyper Ring. Hyper Ring offers 50% movement speed that lasts 3 seconds long, and the ring lasting 6 seconds with a range of 17.5 meters. I consider this ability a little bit easier to use, and as a general rule of thumb, it's great for engaging and disengaging your team. Outside of using it for my team, I like to get aggressive with the speed ring when going for torpedoes, especially if they have a risky comp with hit scans. Some basic tips for the speed ring are: use it as 4 seconds to the door open on push maps and control. Do not stack Hyper Ring with Lucio Amp or abilities like Joker Queen Shout. You can also get the speed boost right as you throw it along with the people it goes through, and then the speed is activated a second time going through it. Hyper Ring also goes through walls, so if you're trying to help someone that's out of LOS, it's smart to use it for that, and communicating when you're using the speed ring is also helpful, especially for tanks. Speaking of tanks, outside of just using it on your team, it is very strong to just use that Hyper Ring on your tank. This helps them with space taking and dueling, as speed is one of the strongest things in Overwatch. Other than tanks, it's great to use in combination with many ultimates like Reaper Blossom or High Noon. For yourself, however, Hyper Ring is very strong when you need to get further away from a dive or if the enemy uses an ult. For her next ability, we will be talking about Glide Boost. Glide Boost offers 40% movement speed and a 50% knockback resistance while lasting 4 seconds on a 6-second cooldown. Juno is a very movement-based character, and I mainly use her glide for getting angles for my torpedoes and scaling buildings. Since Season 1, Juno is a part of a sub-role called Survivor, which activates her passive healing on using only her glide. This means I will use it after getting dove or being 1 HP to heal up faster. Some tech with our Glide Boost is if you use the ability as soon as you get booped or hit by a moon ability, you will get sent flying across, and especially against Lucio, it can help getting very high angles. Some things to keep in mind are to not use on cooldown, especially if you're against dive compositions or need to get to a teammate faster. Lastly, on occasion, I will use my shift when in a 1v1 to activate her passive, but also it can make you hard to hit if you strafe back and forth and have unpredictable movements. This won't always work because they've nerfed her movement and strafing pretty heavily, but it can be good. I will be going over more tech later about her glide, so stay tuned. Finally, for the last ability in Juno's kit, her ultimate orbital ray. This ult heals 85 per second and does 30% damage boost and lasts 8 seconds long, while noting it goes in a straight line from the moment you activate it. It's pretty important to be smart with her ult because it is a harder support one to build typically. You should be using it to engage fights, and it can help to break through hard chokes and even after a choke, especially when a team cannot physically back up from it. I do a weird thing where sometimes I will use my ult behind the enemy so it goes towards my team and I can fly with it and get strong torpedoes. In terms of using the ult defensively, it's usually not great, especially Nano Blade. However, due to the higher heals, it can save you from certain ults like Sigma Flux, Genji Blade with no nano, sometimes Grav, and more. Now, if you're playing against another Juno, you want to be the one to use your ult second, much like how Lucio B is stronger second, because it'll have longer lasting value. Another tip is that it's smart to wait until you have torpedoes before ulting because they'll do even more damage with orbit, or wait until they're around 5 seconds on cooldown since her ult is 8 seconds long. I also like to be greedy and selfish with orbital ray sometimes if I get low or if I see an opportunity where my torpedoes are perfectly lined up like on an angle. Next, we will be discussing the more controversial part of her kit, her perks. Perks are something that get constant changes in Overwatch, so in 6 months from now, this might be inaccurate, but I will talk about the ones now. Out of the minor perks, Locked On and Familiar Vitals, I always choose Locked On. Familiar Vitals is basically locking onto allies faster, and to me, this perk doesn't fit my playstyle because I go for enemy torpedoes most of the time, and if enemies play further than my teammates, I lock onto allies regardless. Lockdown reduces the cooldown of torpedoes by 1 second for each enemy hit, and this is very strong, especially in 6v6 where there are more players. With having torpedoes on a shorter cooldown, this just helps me build orbital ray even faster with it being a highly cost ultimate. Now onto her major perks. I will always choose triple jump, and I stand by that. Like I said earlier, Juno is a movement-based character, and having an extra jump makes the world of difference for getting to certain positions faster and better angles on torpedoes. Faster Blaster is a perk that gives Juno a fully automatic gun while using Glide Boost. I don't like that it's tied to a pretty important cooldown and that it messed with my overall playstyle of playing very vertical. I will still tell people to always choose the perk that they have the most fun on. However, I can tell you how much triple jump has helped me climb and also saved me from so many moments in game. The times I've tested Faster Blaster, I really did want to like it, and it felt rare to get value, especially in high rank, where people will just kite a lot quicker or take cover, and then I have to cancel the glide anyways. In my opinion, the blaster should activate on shift and last 5 seconds even if glide is canceled, or if there was unlimited ammo, I think it'd be better. Or if they just replace the perk with something better like giving Juno a bit more range, in that case, I think I'd consider not choosing triple jump. Another thing I'll be going into is about Juno's positioning. In general, support should be playing behind your tanks and in line of sight of your DPS, and especially your other support. Knowing this, I will typically play high ground as much as possible, granted you're not peeking hit scans or in the open for the enemy to easily kill you. Also, if you're taking angles for torpedoes, it's typically smart to save a movement CD to get to your team quick if they need help. However, if you have a team that is split pushing rather than all going in together through a choke, I like to hold center of the split so I have angles on all teammates. You can push with one group, but it'll be hard to reach the second. Next, on Juno, it's very strong to use high architecture to take cover when playing versus hit scans, and also for going for big torpedoes with being able to hide quickly after firing. You should very rarely ever be the first one to peek in any situation, but going for greedy torpedoes is the only exception, and you have to be careful then. The benefit to sometimes going for these greedy torpedoes is by catching enemies off guard as they're pushing, but you need a quick escape or support from team. Positioning will always be map and comp dependent, like I mentioned, so sometimes it is better to stack with the team, as I've noticed playing against certain dive heroes or even Jetpack Cat, it's okay to be a floor Juno if it means you aren't getting caught off guard. I'll talk about a couple maps with more specific positioning, but if this guide does well, consider making a positioning guide for every map in good Juno spots. First, I'll talk about is King's Row because it's my favorite map. First point on attack, I like to take the top right angles and swing with torpedoes around statue. When my team gets even more space, I'll take the high ground right behind point. On second, this is where stuff gets really fun and you can jump on the roofs of the buildings to get good angles on the paths further down. Finally, on third point attack, I always take the high ground that's right above the mega room and has great cover as well. For defense, I will usually play back behind the hotel menu room, and if my team is holding up further, I'll control the high ground. On second point, I treat it similar to attack, and again, we'll use the tall buildings to get torpedoes from above. And on last point, I will also use the two high grounds and be pretty aggressive. In general, I'd say Juno is good on every map, however, she succeeds a lot in maps that have climbable walls, like most push maps and control. Even on maps like Junkertown that are a little bit more open, I think are just as good because there's room for large torpedoes. You just need to be careful of hit scans. I get asked all the time about Juno's counters and who she synergized with the best, so that'll be the next topic. Starting with counters, Juno is countered by pretty much every hit scan, especially M-Rank, Cass, and Soldier, and dive DPS as well, like Reaper and Tracer. Those can be harder to deal with. She is also weak against Diva for tanks and Ana for support. For specific team comps, Juno is good with rush comps and dive, and she sometimes struggles in hard spam comps from my experience. However, most of the time you just need to adjust your playstyle to make things viable. As for synergies, I find Juno comfortable with most supports as she can be the one to do a lot of healing or doing the damage. I personally don't like her a ton with Moira because I play so high up and it's hard to reach Juno as Moira, but it can still work. As for who I really like playing Juno with, Zenyatta because Discord Orb is very satisfying combo with torpedoes and her primary, and also Brig because she's easy to pack in the sky. Lastly, Juno Kiri I'm biased towards because of CD reduction from Kitsune Rush. Realistically, you can make Juno work with and against the majority of heroes by slightly altering your playstyle. For example, if you play like me and heavily around high ground and torpedoes and your versus hit scans, you may have to play lower and a more heal-like style. As I talked about before, this won't apply to every hit scan matchup, and you may still be able to get greedy. It just really depends how good they are and where they're positioning or playing. Settings I don't find extremely important. However, if you're curious on what I use toggle pulsar torpedoes off and toggle glide boost off. This is a personal preference because I like to hold the abilities because I think it helps being more reactive. For sensitivity, I like to use higher sense because I find it most comfortable. However, you should test multiple ones to find what feels best for you. I don't think crosshair matters on Juno too much. However, for me, I find a tighter and smaller crosshair helps me aim better, or at least that's what I like to think. Moving on to Juno tech, I'll be telling you guys a couple things that are good to know when playing her. The first is that if you jump then use shift and jump again, that'll take you slightly higher than just double jumping and using shift. Next, I constantly use roofs and map geometry to wall climb, kind of like Lucio wall ride. It doesn't work on every wall, you have to find the ones that are curved. On the other end with glide, you can also be above a doorway and get in with glide boost without having to cancel it as well. Another thing I like to do, especially when I have triple jump, is fall off the map if I'm about to die and use glide and jump to get back up to dodge shots and sometimes save my life. You can also tap spacebar on your descent to have more unpredictable movement if you're in a fight and it's deemed necessary. In some 1v1s or fights, playing directly above enemies can help disorient them and help you get the kill. For example, if Bap is using window, he won't get value from it if you're above him, or if there's a shield tank like Ryan, he has to look directly up. This isn't completely Juno tech, however you shouldn't be stacking your glide boost and hyper ring too often as you may need one to survive a dive or something else. I probably should have mentioned this with torpedoes, but what I like to do is save ammo for when you go for torpedoes. So if someone is half HP, you torpedo, shoot them, and you have the ammo to secure that kill. Finally, I spent some time doing one tip against each Overwatch hero's Juno that you guys can either read or screenshot, but most importantly, have fun on Juno. And remember, it does take a lot of practice and confidence building to get this more aggressive playstyle, the one that I have. But also, don't feel bad if you can't or if you don't want to play super aggressive Juno. It's okay to be passive. It's okay to be more healing focused. This is just what works for me and how I climb to rank 1. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I hope I helped. Hi guys. Different outfit. That's right. I just wanted to let you guys know that I also did a VOD review of myself that kind of wraps everything up and really explains how I think in a game. But also, I will be sharing the tips as well. So here's that, and stay to the end of the video if you want to see the VOD review. Thank you again. So this is a game I had on Juno on Lijiang Tower, and I will be kind of explaining my thought process and taking everything from the guide and just putting it into action. Because sometimes people learn better by watching full games and me explaining thought process rather than tips. So that's what we're doing here. So right off the bat here, on control, I think I was a little bit late, but you typically want to speed ring around 5 or 4 seconds. And always on garden, I like to play on this bridge here. You know, you can already see I'm behind my teammates. Bro, I don't like that they're red. Okay, red is allies, all right? Red is allies. You get it. And yes, I'm using my speed ring on my tanks. This is something I said in the guide, and I'll say it again. Pop that speed ring on your tanks, and it just offers so much for them. And you can see I was kind of being shot out by the Tracer on the right, and I started kiting in the dojo room. If Tracer is flanking me, I will just go in the opposite direction she's pushing me from, if I can't fight her. But yeah, kind of just playing this cover because I know they have an Ashe going for torpedoes only when they start walking up, and just healing my team. I play very healy around this area. There's another thing that I was thinking. But yeah, they do have a hit scan. They have a really good hit scan, actually. That's why I'm not playing super aggressive. And yeah, okay. Okay, now I'm just healing. Still healing. Doing the torpedoes because it heals pretty fast. And I don't... Like, if I know I'm not going to be going for damage torpedoes a lot against spam comps like this, I don't mind just using a double heal torpedo. Like, it's okay to not... It's okay to not... save it for over 2 people. LOL. And there I was just kiting safely. You can see my position is very much so just playing around my tanks. Very centered. You will see me go for more off angles later, though. And here we have Orbit. So this is an engage ultimate. Because they have the point. So we want to push in with it. Okay. So good at bot reading. No, I'm not good at this. Yeah, what I'm doing is I'm waiting for them to come to point. I hear the Rhine pin, and that's when I orbit because I know he's coming to point. I don't want to just orbit when there's no one there, because they won't push. So I have to orbit when they're pushing. And one of Juno's biggest counters is Mizu ult, so most of the time I won't even go in it. Like, I won't even go in it. I'll just completely wait it out. Like, a lot of times, if I see a Mizu ult, I just hard hold torpedoes until the ult is over. Yep, that's me just going for poke. Now I'm playing kind of center of my teammates. I have teammates on right and I have teammates on left bridge, so I'm playing center like I mentioned in my guide earlier. Using, again, sometimes saving your CDs, your movement Cs to get away from someone. Saving shift against Rhine. Even though as Juno, you shouldn't be really in ball range of Rhine ever. It's kind of hard to avoid, though, on these types of maps that are really close range. But yeah, just, you know, you don't want to spam your CDs if you don't really need them. Actually, a lot of this game, I do use my shift for the passive heal. I remember. Bum, bum, bum. All right, so now we're setting up for a push on right. I'm close to orbit, so I'm going to play really safe because it's last fight. And I think we're aware. No, he doesn't have shatter. My team said he had shatter, so I was like playing kind of scared. Okay, so we're just healing. We're farming orbit. Just hard farming that orbit. And this is the last fight. I knew the Reaper was up there. That's why I orbited. But we kind of already just lost that fight. Nothing. I genuinely don't think there's anything I could have really done differently there. So then we lose that. I come back. I die. That map is over. Bang, bang, bang. Hope that helps. Here's the next one. Yeah, that map, I probably played more passive than I ever do on Juno. Like, because I know they have a really good hit scan. So I'm not double jumping a lot. I'm using my shift to get behind cover quite frequently. And you'll see how my playstyle changes throughout the maps slightly. So use that speed ring at 4 or 5 seconds. on this point. This is really good for swinging torpedoes out. But I think, yeah, right now we do have triple jump. So you guys know how I feel about triple jump. It complements my playstyle very well. Even if I'm against hit scan, I still choose it because it can help you get in spots. And like right here, like look at how big that angle is. Especially on this point, you can triple jump in that little window area. So, yeah, honestly, my team, we just all had really good positioning there. Heal them up. We were able to, my team made space. I was able to go for big torpedoes, etc., etc. Thanks, Nawa. I try. Yeah, I don't ever do VOD reviews, so if this is kind of scuffed, I'm sorry. Yeah, right here, I typically always still playing behind my team. And they start pressure and we have to play back on point. So being like on Juno, you really need to be quick at knowing when things are happening and rotating fast. Here, I know Tracer's on me. I'm ignoring her. Like, I won't always ignore her, but in this case, I kind of had to. And, you know, my Ashe still dies, but now I'm full HP. I have my cooldowns and we can get her out. Like, you can heavily use Windows architecture to dodge Tracer and be annoying. Like, Juno is sometimes just as annoying as Tracer. And here's me just going for a damage torpedo, a little greedy. I knew I had the angle. They're walking in. They're not going to expect a Juno to go for that. And then orbiting when they are already in. Force them to back up. Like, that Ryan was kind of dead. He had nothing. But I think we still lose this fight, maybe? I don't know. It was a good orbit, though. It was a good orbit. Yeah, I think we do lose this fight. Yes.
We're giving him the point. Guess I missed the memo.
So let's fast forward a little bit. All right, so now attacking. It's kind of trickier to retake as Juno. Like, very tricky. So you want to focus on allowing your tanks to take space. You know, speeding them. And then we got grabbed. And then my Mizu had a fantastic... Oh, and then I died. So, yes. That is just... What could we have done differently there? Nothing! Sometimes nothing! You know, sometimes it is like that. Overwatch is a very ult-dependent game. And ults will... Some ults aren't counterable. Like, we could have been playing across the map. But you don't want to always play like a wuss. Okay? You don't always want to do like that. It's important to have confidence, and that's how I'm able to carry games is with confidence. So my Zarya had a really good grab here, but I knew I was anti, so I didn't want to get too aggressive. But the Ryan wasn't swinging. We're able to kind of shoot him melee. Then, oh gosh, wait, this is kind of embarrassing. I thought I killed her, so I like low-key looked away. And then we traded with the Ana, which is not bad. You know, my team's able to push in after that. My team is red team, by the way. I'm starting to forget. Yeah, my team is red team.
We got him where we want him.
We got him where we want him. Last fight, my team is just having good ults in their spawn. Oh. Yeah, to sum up that round, I was able to play more aggressive with triple jump. We were able to get around the buildings more and go for DPS-y torpedoes a little bit more, you know, because we did have the point a lot. And when you have the point, when you have control, it's easier to get aggressive with torpedoes because the enemies have to walk into you rather than you walking into them. So it's just easier to catch them off guard when for off-angle triple jump torpedoes, you know, from when they're walking. Yes, yes, yes. And this map isn't particularly good for Juno, but I still play her here, and I will. You're gonna see why it can be good for Juno. It's mainly the retake that kind of sucks. So this is how I pretty much start every control center map is Juno. I play in white, help my team. My team is red. Okay, Armada dies. We gotta kite a little bit. Sometimes if we start winning the fight, then I'll swing more out to point. But since we're losing, we have to fully back up. But a lot of times I do swing to point to get a torpedo in the people from white. So now it's what you can do here on Juno is just heal, farm your ult, and keep going for torpedoes to put pressure. It is very, very, very tricky. Like heck this point. But thank goodness for Malga. This is what I mean, swinging. Our Ashe had a big dynamite, so I felt like I could really get in there, and I let her die. That's, you know, is what it is. Sometimes I focus more on DPS. And the swing helped. The swing helped. Oh, also, sometimes I hold torpedoes really long. Like, that was intentional. I knew their Zarya was down, so I was holding torpedoes for when my teammates started taking damage. So they would get the initial burst and then the overtime. Like, it's less so waiting. Sorry, I need to pause this. It's less so waiting for someone to, for an enemy to walk into my torpedo, and more waiting for my team to start taking damage so that the torpedo gets more heal value. That makes sense. But yeah, there's the Mizu ult. I'm not really shooting it. Using torpedoes after. It's really big. 2 of my teammates died, but I see my Malga's getting a kill, and I always like to turn a fight. So I saw that my Malga killed 2. He has Cage. It is really heckin' winnable. Orbit Cage, very good. My Ashe pops a Bob, and like we're able to just do our DPS thing and win that. So being able to like turn fights like this and just having that confidence to go for these plays is really important, and that will set you apart from, like, you know, another Juno. Having the confidence in your aim, in your team. Like, if my Malga hadn't killed 2, I don't think I would have gone for it. But because I saw him get kills, like, I knew it was winnable. But yeah, this is the part. Okay, this is a really good spot to hold on Juno. Really good. I was slowed by Hanzo. It was dumb to be peeking too much, but this spot is really strong. And once you have control, this is where I play most of the time on Juno, because you get such a big line of sight of point. Well, Malga went in, so. Zarya gets a massive grab again. You know, you see me default back to that high ground again. But honestly, I should have immediately, like, kind of played the corner when I heard the Sojo. Like, sometimes, you know, I make a lot of mistakes. I really do. I really do. I'm not a perfect Juno player. All right? Like, I'm aware. I'm just really greedy. So we get another fight because we got picked and we were dying. But we're still alive. The last fight's coming up. We have our orbit. Well, almost. Right now, I'm just, like, trying to really hard spam to get my ults. So, wow. Ryan starts pinning me. I know my Zarya has bubble, so I'm like, yeah, girl, I trust you. And this Ryan is dead. But if my Zarya did have bubble, I would have died there, and it would have been my fault. Like, I just kind of got lucky having a really good teammate. And here we were able to just push in with ults and win. But we didn't necessarily need Orbit to win the fight. And that's the game. That is the game. So I hope that helped kind of helped people understand why I do what I do, and the way that I was constantly using my speed ring on my tanks and shift to get away from people, to hide corners, the way we were engaging with our ultimates. And, you know, it's okay to, like, hold the ult a little bit and really wait for the enemies to push in, or for you to push in and catch someone off guard with it. That is, like, the best time to orbit. And what else? Yeah, getting all the angles is really important, but you must be aware of what the enemy is running. You know, they had a hit scan, so I wasn't playing all out in the open, even though I have triple jump. I was aware. I was aware for the most part. So yeah, hope this helps. Thank you so much, YouTube.